I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, state lawmakers want to make sure more children get vaccinated. They want to change the rules about exemptions.
The parents of a veteran who died by suicide offer personal insight into the new Veteran Suicide Prevention Act to be signed by President Obama. I'm Peggy Pico with our conversation and a new twist on binge drinking by college students. How dangerous is drunkorexia and who's most at risk?
Relieving traffic congestion and parking with bike power. We'll tell you about a free service being offered to golf fans at the Farmers Open in Torrey Pines. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. In the midst of a measles outbreak in 14 states, some California lawmakers want to eliminate personal belief exemptions for vaccinations. Right now, state law lets parents opt out of vaccines for their children based on their personal beliefs. State Senator Richard Pan is one of the sponsors. He's a pediatrician and says he's seen children suffer from preventable illnesses.
In 2000, we declared measles eradicated from this country. Last year, we had over 644 cases of measles, and we're on a trajectory to pass that this year. That's a problem for the public health.
San Diego Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez is also supporting the bill. It would allow religious exemptions to continue. At the same time, Senators Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein are asking state health officials to reconsider its vaccine rules. In a letter to the Health and Human Services Department, the senators say, quote, there should be no such thing as a philosophical or personal belief exemption since everyone uses public spaces. County Health Agency says 10 more people died of flu-related causes last week. There have now been 29 flu deaths in the county this season. All of the patients were in their 60s and older and had underlying medical conditions. Republican lawmakers have voted dozens of times to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Tomorrow, some of them are set to unveil a replacement plan. It would eliminate mandatory coverage and offer tax credits to help people buy insurance. Americans who didn't have coverage in 2014 will face a tax penalty on their upcoming return and must enroll in a plan by February 15th to avoid paying a bigger fine next year. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg says the deadline is forcing people to make a choice.
At the Old Town office of the nonprofit San Diegans for Healthcare Coverage, Rob Keller is trying to choose a health insurance plan.
So this is every 2 weeks, or how?
Correct, every 2 weeks, based off of $9 an hour.
Determining Keller's annual income from his job as a waiter is key to finding out whether he's eligible for free Medi-Cal coverage.
You might default into Medi-Cal with that.
Or a discounted Covered California plan.
You know, I've had health insurance in the past just because I was with my company, but I never really, used it or needed it. I don't go to the doctor that much.
Qualify for the silver.
Even so, Keller says a February 15th deadline caused him to get with the program.
I didn't want to have a penalty for getting nothing. I might as well pay money to have health insurance.
Over 17 million Californians get health insurance through their job. For Keller and the more than 6 million Californians who don't, February 15th looms large. By that date, they must be enrolled in a plan, or they'll face a federal tax penalty on next year's return. The penalty will be $975 per family, or 2% of annual household income, whichever amount is greater. San Diego State professor of accounting Stephen Gill says that's not a lot of money.
We'd rather pay nothing than something, but it's unlikely that anyone would have to go bankrupt because they ended up having to pay the penalties and the fines associated with the Obamacare.
Gill says, as it turns out, the law prohibits the IRS from pursuing civil or criminal penalties to collect the Obamacare fine.
The IRS isn't really going to pursue you with any rigorous enforcement, even if you don't pay it.
The IRS will simply subtract the penalty from any future refunds. But that's not really the point, says Jan Spenceley, who directs San Diegans for Healthcare Coverage.
I think the biggest penalty
is not having coverage and not having access to care.
Spenceley points out no one knows when they're going to be sick or have an accident. She says without insurance, one trip to an emergency room can mean financial ruin.
So people really need to understand that there's value in insurance. It limits your liability, it gets you free preventive care, and it also makes sure that you don't have small things turn into large things.
Mom's chili.
Better than Dad's chili.
Dad's gonna make rice.
Nonetheless, local banking executive Toby Hayes and his wife Stephanie have decided to roll the dice.
You got stickers everywhere.
Their 6 kids are covered under Medi-Cal, and Toby gets insurance through his job, but Stephanie is uninsured. Toby says it was just a matter of finances.
For the basic bronze level plan for Stephanie, it was going to be like $4,000 for the year. It comes out to like $334 a month, versus what we paid in the penalty, which was $763 for the year.
They're aware that the penalty will be higher in 2015, but Toby says it's still cheaper than buying health coverage.
Alyssa, give me a chocolate milk.
Stephanie doesn't think she's taking a big chance by being uninsured.
I've always been a very, very healthy person, and if tomorrow I come down with cancer, then we're going to figure out something when we get there. But right now, I hate wasting money.
But for people who believe health insurance is valuable and want to avoid a tax penalty, the deadline for enrolling in a covered California plan is less than 2 weeks away. Otherwise, whatever health issues crop up, people have to wait until the next open enrollment period to sign up. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
Video journalist Katie Shulov helped produce that story. The Supreme Court is taking another look at the Affordable Care Act. It's expected to rule in June on subsidies given to people who buy insurance on the federal exchange rather than through a state exchange like Covered California. The battle over immigration continues. A proposal by House Republicans was blocked today in the Senate. It would cut off funding for President Obama's executive action on immigration. Today, the president met with 6 young immigrants who would get deported under the House bill, and he repeated his threat to veto the legislation if passed.
I want to be as clear as possible. I will veto any legislation that got to my desk that took away the chance of these young people who grew up here and who are prepared to contribute to this country.
Obama accused Republicans of ignoring the human consequences of their legislation. Both sides have until the end of the month to come up with a final bill. President Obama says he'll sign the Clay Hunt Veteran Suicide Prevention Act after the Senate approved the bill yesterday. Peggy Pico finds out what the bill means to the parents of a vet who took his own life.
New data reveals suicide rates among Iraq and Afghanistan war-era veterans are 50% higher than in the civilian population. The Veteran Suicide Prevention Bill will enhance mental health services offered through the VA medical system. Joining me with a personal look at the issue are my guests, Jean and Dr. Howard Somers, who became suicide prevention advocates after their son, Sergeant Daniel Somers, died by suicide in 2013. And Dr. Howard, so the two of you began speaking to Congress members to improve suicide prevention services after the death of your son. How will the Clay Hunt Veterans Suicide Prevention Bill help with that?
Well, we think the Clay Hunt Bill is an excellent first step in this effort. There are some provisions in there that here in San Diego we already are ahead of the game, but in the rest of the country we're not. There's a peer advocate portion of this bill that is incredibly important because veterans actually speak with and will listen to and trust their peers more than they'll trust anybody else. There's a loan forgiveness for those, only 10 a year though, which we feel is a very limited number, for those medical students who agreed to go into a psychiatric residency or residents who agreed to work at the VA, but unfortunately it's only for a limited amount of time, for 2 years.
10 people getting school that would have their
but only 10.
Right,
we could probably use half that number here in San Diego at this point.
There's $22 million federal dollars that are going to be spent with this bill to sort of boost services for suicide prevention. But that's not new money.
Correct.
Where is that money coming from, and does it mean that other services are going to have to be cut?
I think we have some concerns about that. It's something that Secretary McDonald told Congress that he could do. But we have talked to other people in the VA that question whether or not that's really going to be able to be done. I believe specifically with this peer support program, it actually calls for a new position. So a new position means money.
And it has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, that has to come from somewhere.
Now, Jean, the both of you became suicide prevention advocates, they said, after following your son's death. Jean, did your son reach out for help from the veterans medical system?
Absolutely. Daniel wasn't one of the veterans who was afraid to seek help. He went immediately. He had a problem getting help because he was in National Guard, and there was some confusion as to what his status in the National Guard was, whether he was considered active or deactivated. So it actually took him 3 months before he was able to be seen at the VA till they got that all squared away.
And then afterwards, it took quite a bit longer. Something happened.
Well, Daniel unfortunately was caught in the situation in Phoenix. And we know everything that went on, and we probably don't know everything that went on, but a lot of the issues that were going on in Phoenix at the time. Yes, Daniel had a mental health provider who he felt good with, as we understand. That provider left, which they are wont to do. He was told, go out to the desk and they'll set you up with another doctor. And he was told that, well, we'll send you a postcard, and that was in 2008. And even when he died in 2013, he'd never received that postcard.
Do you think, Jean, that the Clay Hunt Suicide Prevention, Veterans Prevention Act here would have helped your son?
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure it would have. What they really need is more mental health professionals, and that's not just the VA. That's the entire country needs more mental health professionals and good mental health professionals. So I really feel that is probably the major problem right now.
Get enough people. Now, Howard, what would your advice be to veterans and their families who, if they feel like your son, they're not getting the help they need fast enough from the VA medical system?
The thing that we're telling people now is call your local congressional office. Call your local politicians. Every congressional office has somebody who deals with veterans issues and military issues. Even on a more local basis, on a city or county basis, there are veteran advocates. Don't just go to the VA Medical Center. Go to your local vet center. These are wonderful areas, wonderful peer-run facilities that are actually associated with the VAs. If I may very quickly, there are a couple things in there that might be of help to future Daniels. Number one, in the Clay Hunt Act, is that they're going to have a website mandated that is going to have all of the information supposedly having to do with mental health. And the other is that there's going to be a federally mandated independent review of every facility on an annual basis. And we think that the fact that it's going to be independent and annual is very important.
Right. Well, Dr. Howard Somers and Jean Somers, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you very much.
California drivers could soon be asked to pay a road user charge to help fund a $10 billion plan to improve state roads and highways. Assembly Speaker Toni Atkins announced the proposal today. She didn't have details on how the charge would work, but said it would be about $800 million a year for 5 years. She says it would be about $1 a week for most drivers. Another $1 billion a year would come from a fee already paid by truckers.
As it is now, it's estimated the average motorist is already paying upwards of $800 a year in repairs, wear and tear, and reduced gas mileage due to poorly maintained roads. Add in congestion delays and the cost of inaction go even higher. Traffic tie-ups cost Californians approximately $18.7 billion annually in lost time and fuel.
Atkins says more than half of the state's roads need repair. If the plan passes, work would begin in the next fiscal year. The battle over foie gras is not over yet. State Attorney General Kamala Harris says she will appeal a ruling that overturned a state ban on the gourmet dish. Foie gras is controversial because it's produced by force-feeding ducks and geese. For now, it's still on the menu. The appeal doesn't ask for immediate reinstatement of the ban. San Diego Gas and Electric wants to change how your energy bill is added up. The utility says the changes are far overdue, but two San Diego City Council members say they're unfair. Councilman David Alvarez and Todd Gloria say the utility would raise rates for low energy users and lower rates for high energy users.
We're concerned because SDG&E customers that are the most effective at conserving electricity are going to be punished by this rate. And the customers who do not conserve are going to be rewarded.
SDG&E says the changes would bring relief to ratepayers who have unfairly shouldered rising energy costs for years. The California Public Utility Commission will have the final say. A pair of solar projects got tentative approval today from county supervisors. They're planned for Boulevard, one along the border, the other north of Interstate 8. It was a 4-1 vote. Some neighbors say they're worried about fire and environmental risks and about the financial stability of Soitec, the Rancho Bernardo-based builder. Last month, Soitec announced 100 layoffs, and some media reports put the company on its deathbed. A new innovation center is just getting started in downtown San Diego. KPBS reporter Matt Bowler is in the newsroom with a look.
Hundreds turn out to help dedicate a new business or a new nonprofit in a new neighborhood at 14th and E. First, the new neighborhood, Maker's Quarter. It's on the eastern end of downtown near the main police station. Stacy Pennington, the urban planner for Maker's Quarter, says you can't stop progress. But, she says, you can guide it.
Growth downtown in our region is going to happen, no matter what. And how it happens is really the opportunity that we are focused on.
Part of that focus is making it easier for people to start up their own businesses. And that's what Fab Lab does. Fab, for Fabrication Lab, is a nonprofit helping startups learn and build the things they need in order to grow. Katie Rass, director of Fab Lab, sees tons of potential in its new downtown location.
Large, open area that we can use as a space to create just about anything, really.
David Rayner's involved in one of those small businesses. He and his two partners are creating a 3D printer for human tissue. Rayner says Fab Lab is integral to his business.
It allows us access to all kinds of machines and devices.
Fab Lab and Maker's Quarter say innovation is what grows economies. Their next step is hunting down venture capital. Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
Baseball fans will have to go through metal detectors at Petco Park from now on. The Padres say it's an effort to improve stadium security at all major league parks. By the way, the Padres home opener is April 9th against the San Francisco Giants. Torrey Pines Golf Course is hosting the Farmers Insurance Open this week, featuring Tiger Woods and San Diego native Phil Mickelson. The first round of the 4-day tournament begins tomorrow morning. San Diego Bike Coalition is back this year, offering free valet parking to help relieve traffic congestion and give fans an alternative to driving.
A big part of the reason why bike valet is attractive to festival organizers is that oftentimes what people end up doing is locking their bikes to the fences, around trees, around signposts. Sometimes they'll end up blocking the sidewalks, creating access issues.
Vehicle parking at the site can cost up to $95 a day. About 250 bikes were secured during last year's golf tournament. Farmers Insurance will donate $10 to the nonprofit for every bike parked. The valet service is located on the tennis courts of the Hilton Torrey Pines. Binge drinking on college campuses isn't new, but now some students skip meals to save calories and get drunk faster. Peggy Pico takes a look at the impact of the growing trend.
Drunkorexia, as it's called, is not an official medical term or an eating disorder, but health experts say the effects are worrisome, especially for young women. Here with the details are my guest, therapist Dana Peters with the Eating Disorder Center of San Diego and Professor Mark Kern from SDSU's School of Exercise and Nutrition. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Dana, as we said, this isn't an official diagnosis or even an official disorder like anorexia, but there are some specific behaviors that go with drunkorexia. Could you tell us some of the more typical ones?
Sure. Typically, you'd see a restriction of calories, and we're talking an extreme amount, or some binge eating coupled with purging in order to compensate for later binge drinking later in the evening.
So basically, you may skip all your meals because you're going to go out drinking that night.
Exactly.
Or severely limit. Is there a difference on how men and women do this?
You know, there's no research on that, and not to my knowledge. I do know that women typically do have more weight concerns, so we are seeing it more in a woman population. But no, there's no research on that.
And this has been around for a little while. It's kind of trending a little bit right now. But how prevalent is it?
It's pretty prevalent. Usually we see with eating disorders, there's always some sort of co-occurring diagnosis going on, and a large amount of the time that does include substance abuse, in particular alcohol.
And Mark, so what happens when a person doesn't eat all day and then they start binge drinking at night? What happens in their body?
Well, it doesn't take binge drinking to start feeling the effects of alcohol. Alcohol is absorbed very early in the GI tract, so you can start feeling the effects of alcohol very soon after you consume it. And of course, if you do that on an empty stomach, then the effects are going to be magnified compared to if you do it after eating.
Is there any side effect with that? I mean, so you're saying you might get drunk faster, but would you also have more stomach upset? Would somebody maybe get sicker faster?
Some people do have stomach issues when they consume alcohol, so it could cause inflammation of the lining of the stomach. I don't know that it happens more in those people when they have an empty stomach, but I wouldn't be surprised.
What kind of long-term health risk is there if you're habitually not eating and you're drinking on an empty stomach?
Well, I don't think it needs to be an empty stomach. Major health risks for nutrition include vitamin B1 deficiency and vitamin A deficiency in people who are consuming excess alcohol consistently.
Along with other alcoholic abuse problems, right, and side effects that you would typically get.
So there could be all sorts of behavioral issues and risky behaviors that are associated with becoming drunk.
What do you think, Dana, is driving this behavior, this drunkorexia, if you will?
I think it's several things. I think that in the college community there is a draw or a desire to have it all, and that includes being able to drink with the best of them and drinking to excess in order to fit in, on top of the issues that girls already have with the way that their body looks. So body image issues coupled with kind of a need to fit in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what do you hear from your clients on that? Is that what they're saying as well? That this is sort of leaning toward an eating disorder?
Yeah, I'd say at the surface, our clients say that it is about fitting in and looking a certain way and having that confidence with their friends. However, on a deeper level, it's about a need for them to cope with something.
And Mark, what would you say to that? Do you think there's a driving force behind this that seems to be?
The research I've seen indicates that people are doing it for two main reasons. One is to maintain thinness or to avoid extra weight gain. The other is to get a faster buzz and more effective drunkenness, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. When would you say, I'll start with you, Mark, when would you say this has turned into a problem? Someone's crossed the line, they need to get help. Are there particular symptoms you would tell, let's say, students who would say, oh man, that this person's gone off the deep end?
I would avoid diagnosing anyone, but there are criteria from the Diagnostic Statistics Manual 5 for alcohol abuse disorder. And if people meet a certain number of those criteria, then they can be diagnosed with alcohol abuse disorder.
And Dina, what would you say? When does it go beyond, I'm trying to not gain 5 pounds and I'm partying with sororities or frat houses, to this is a problem and I need to get help? But where should you go and how should you do it?
Well, first thing is to really assess the severity and how much is this really interfering with your activities of daily living, your work, your relationships. And at that point, deciding how serious is this? Do I need to seek residential care for co-occurring disorders? Can I go to an intensive outpatient program? Can I just get support from outpatient providers such as a therapist and a psychiatrist?
Okay, all right. Well, Dana Peters and Mark Kern, Professor Mark Kern, thank you so much.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, tune in for our look at how online streaming services like Spotify are reshaping the music business. That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
Tonight, a spectacular new National Geographic series airs on PBS. Earth, the New Wild is an ambitious 5-part series taking a fresh look at our relationship to the planet's wildest places and most fascinating species. Host Dr. M. Sanjayan recently sat down with Evening Edition for a preview and tells us why this nature series is different from others.
You know, we didn't want to do your typical nature show which just shows you nature in its splendor, but in isolation. You don't ever see a human, you don't see a wire, you don't see a road, you don't see anything, right? Except that spectacle. At the same time, we didn't want to do a show that's all about me, which is, going, catching the animal and doing something to it. We really wanted to show you the planet as it really is. I mean, a wildlife spectacle is made even more spectacular when you realize that it's happening within the human context.
Earth, a New Wild spans 29 different countries, and you can watch the first part of the National Geographic series tonight right here on KPBS, beginning at 9 o'clock. Let's take a quick look at the forecast. Low 70s along the coast for the next few days. Upper 70s for the inland valleys with some clouds by the weekend. Clear in the mountains with temperatures in the mid to upper 60s and mid 80s in the desert tomorrow right through Saturday. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.